All right, look what Erin just pulled up in. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. You're gonna take me out.
Yes.
All right, let's go. Okay, so Erin.
Yes.
Refuge Manager, where are we headed?
We are headed to units 23, 24, and 25 to show you some of the recently burned areas and
Perfect.
see what we can find.
All right. Super excited.
Right now it's dry, it's getting drier, it's the dry season, so it's not as bad, but our roads have some heavy duty potholes that these tires handle better than a truck. So we're on the National Wildlife Refuge. To our right, or the north, is Unit 25. And then to our south here is Unit 24, which adjoins I-75 on the southern edge.
And you have things in units. What does that mean, like units?
That's just the way we've broken it up. So we do management by units. So like when we do a prescribed burn, we pick the units we're going to burn. So we don't do large acreages. We just do it by units, depending on what that unit has in it. Habitat-wise, would depend on what the management would be. But it's 26,000 acres, so that's a way for us to break it up into units.
Right. Okay, I get it.
There's usually like, this is a pretty established road, but a lot of times they're like grass roads, like right there, which are kind of just fire breaks that we keep mowed, which sometimes bisect units. This one actually goes through 24, so it's not bisecting any units, but those are often what we use for our distinguishing lines.
And so why do you do burns?
So in South Florida, many of our ecosystems are fire dependent, pine flatwoods being one of the primary ones. And so the general habitat out here is pine flatwoods, which is the pine overstory with very minimal mid-story and then grasses on the ground. And here you see a lot of hardwoods starting to come in, encroach in, and so this definitely needs to be burned. Just because it's right next to the highway, we have to have very specific conditions before we're allowed to do a burn. So we're waiting for those correct conditions. And that's wind, that's moisture in the air, but it's also moisture on the ground. So we're already getting into really dry conditions, so we may not be able to burn this, unfortunately, this year until we get some more rain, and then we have to wait for the winds to be correct. But you'll notice there's some cabbage palms coming up. Now, cabbage palms historically were not seen in pine flatwoods, but because of lack of fire and changes in hydrology, mainly loss of water on the landscape, pulled off of the landscape on the wrong time, these cabbage palms have come in and almost created monocultures in a lot of our public areas. So you'll notice on the unit to your right, there's some stumps here. We've actually had some days where we cut cabbage palms, mature cabbage palms down, but we also do treatments where we use a specific herbicide to go into the heart of the palm of the young ones that we can reach and herbicide them, and that's the only way to really kill them long term, unless we cut them like that, because they like fire. They'll burn and be just fine. We can't kill them with fire. It's got to be a specific herbicide into the actual heart of the palm to kill them.
Wow.
And so we've done a huge palm removal project here. And if this had been recently burned, you would be able to see a lot of the grassland area. So that's our objective, is to get it back into a natural pine flatwood state that we can, as close as we can get.
And why do you want to do that?
Well, it's a natural habitat, so that's one of our goals. And this is one of the habitats that the Florida panther uses. So it's kind of, it enhances the prey base. It provides more forage for deer, and so we increase our prey base, and that helps the panthers as well. A lot of our ecosystems are fire dependent, and so with pine flatwoods, it's these grasses that carry the fire that keeps the system healthy. And there's many, many different species in there that we have native to these ecosystems.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous out here.
So you can see the grasses. That's what we would be looking for.
Oh, that's
these shrubs coming in that normally wouldn't be here if we were able to maintain a good fire regime. So this is one of the areas, Unit 25, that we burned on Friday. You can still see some smoke in some of the long-term fuels. Usually those are stumps or high areas of what we call duff, which is layers of soil and leaf litter and stuff that just kind of burns over time. And so there are multiple types of burns, type 1, type 2, type 3, and the level of that fire determines how many resources we use on a fire. And resources include our engines, our people, if we have ships such as helicopters that come in. And I'm not really sure what this was rated, but we had 3 groups that were out on Friday. We had a helicopter that was dropping ping pongs in the middle of the unit, and so those fires move out from the center. And then we had 2 groups that were on the outer edges that were burning into the interior. And we only burn the areas that we can manage at a time, so we don't light everything and then just wait. We do it in sections so that we can manage it, and we make sure we have, like I said, our engines that have our water supplies and have other things that we can manage flames if we need to.
And so I always wonder what the animals do. Do they just run for cover and then come back, or what do they do?
Yes, so on the fire lines, like where we're sitting right now, as they're lighting the fire, and again, we did a very slow burn, and we did it slow enough that animals could move in case we had any denning females, bears or panthers, because this is high denning habitat, so that they could move if they wanted to. And if you're standing on the line, you'll see snakes come out. When I was standing on the line, there was marsh rabbits that were moving in and out. And so yeah, they'll come out to the fire and then they'll go right back in.
Oh,
especially
really?
deer. Deer will be in there within hours because they'll start eating. They'll eat some of the ash. But if you have a good rain after a fire, you'll have new growth within days, and they love that new green growth as well.
Wow.
So yeah, everybody moves out and goes right back in, generally speaking. And because we don't have intense fires, I mean, I'm sure there's some loss to some species, reptiles or something that can't move that fast. But because ours are so slow and it burns in patches, a mosaic, which is what we prefer, those animals can just move, you know, a few feet into another area and be safe and covered.
And you don't worry about these slow burns, as you're calling them, catching on fire again because it's in a moisture area, or?
That's correct. So they will monitor the fire for 24 to 48 hours to monitor these areas that are slow smoking, and if there's active flames, they'll knock them out with water. If it's areas that you can just leave it and let it burn, we let it do that. So again, it helps with future wildfire prevention if we burn out those things that are going to be burning for a while. So. But we have people that will monitor them all week long. They'll come in and check on them probably twice a day, as well as the initial 24, 48 hours. This unit to our left is Unit 23, and this was burned about a month ago. So you can see how green the grass is already.
Wow.
And it's already filled back in. So this was done on Friday, and this was done a month ago.
Friday, a month ago. Wow, you aren't joking. That does come back fast. So this must have been a high grass area because it really, like the fire here.
Yes, this is one of our, I guess one of our, call like a prairie section that they waited till the end to burn to get it just a little bit hotter so they could get as much of the grass to catch as they could. So yes, and you'll see this area right here that's still green. That's actually wetland. That's why it's still green. You can kind of see the changes in the grass types.
Oh, prairie to wetland. That's that interesting. Look at that little oasis of green.
It's one of the most interesting things about habitat in Florida is that we, as you know, don't have mountains. We don't have a big topography. All our topography is at the ground level, and it's millimeters of change. And just millimeters of change will change from an upland where you have pines to a wetland. So a freshwater wetland that's made of grasses to the Cypress Sloughs, which we don't have in this particular area right now. But just those millimeter changes in basically elevation changes your hydrology, soil changes, and then you have minuscule changes in habitat types. And it's really interesting to see them. If it's big, if it's healthy habitat, you can tell the difference between a wet prairie and a dry prairie just by the habitat types and lack of trees or that trees are present.
So interesting. You said millimeters of elevation.
Millimeters of elevation, yes.
Makes a huge difference. Wow.
Here, well, this is what that will look like in probably a month or so after we get some good rains.
So that will look like that. Man, isn't that beautiful? Now we just need a panther to come strolling along.
Yes. Wouldn't that be grand?
Yes.
I've been working off of this refuge for 12 years. I was a private lands biologist before I became part of the refuge family. Or part of the refuge management, I should say.
So they think that refuge staff get to do this all day and you don't do.
No, I spend most of my time behind the computer doing administrative stuff and trying to work through funds and staffing, you know. Right now on the Florida Panther Refuge we have only 2 full-time staff.
Oh my gosh.
And so we have 2 people who are trying to keep things running. And on 26,000 acres here plus our 10,000 Island National Wildlife Refuge, which is part of this complex.
Oh my gosh.
So it's tough and there's a lot of frustration.
We need more money.
We need lots of more money, yes.
Man.
Basically, we have been on a flat line of funding for about 10 years. And so we have had no increases that have actually, you know, benefited us.
And if we don't, oh, look at this stuff we're going through. It's just crazy to me because if we don't have our habitat and wildlife, it's a loss you just don't get back.
Yeah, I mean, it does impact our water quality, our air quality, our well-being.
Yeah.
To have these outdoor areas. So here we have a Cypress Slough, and again, this is a change in soil and hydrology, and this is usually a little bigger drop in the soil elevation, and it'll hold water for longer periods of the year. And this one you can see you've got these hardwood shrubs mid-story marching into the cypress dome, and that again is because of changes in hydrology. So it's actually drier long enough that those hardwoods can survive. These are South Florida slash pines.
So they're burnt at the base, but they survive?
Yes, so they're actually fire dependent, and the fire actually helps them produce and disperse seeds.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. So if there wasn't a fire, they
still produce, but they're not as productive. And also the flip side of that is by opening up the ground cover and opening up the ground, their seeds have a better chance of actually finding a place to actually take growth.
Yeah.
And you see all the cabbage palm? That should be there.
Wow, so is that considered an invasive species?
So it's a native plant, but again, because of the changes in hydrology and lack of fire, they've come up in areas where they wouldn't be so prominent. So you might see 1 or 2, maybe again on the edges of ecotones, or on the edges of ecotones, but you should not have this many.
Wow. That is a lot.
This is about the size where we would come in with an herbicide and actually kill them.
Woo! Ah, this is just breathtaking. Which is why I want people to see this, because a lot of refuges, you know, they're for wildlife and people don't see them, and I think we all forget how much space animals and wildlife need as well as humans need, and they have a priority. And these places are valuable. Like, what does a panther need? 200
square miles, male.
A male needs.
Range. Yeah.
Wow.
Let's say up to, depends on how much prey they have available.
Up to 200 square miles. Now that's a lot of habitat.
Yes, it is.
They're endangered. And how many do you have, do you know of in this?
We're estimating around 200 in our population right now.
Is that considered good or bad?
Well, it's better than it was in the 1980s when we were down to 30.
Wow, so it's gone up from that. So that's some good news.
Yes, yes, and that was through an intensive breeding effort by the state and federal agencies who brought in 8 female Texas Cougars to breed with male Panthers to help the genetics, because we were having a lot of inbreeding traits showing up, and you know, that kind of started the rebound.
So this might be a dumb question, but a panther mating with a cougar,
They're both puma species.
Oh, so then
it's just panthers are a different subspecies, and it's because of their isolated habitat. They have a little bit different. They're a little stockier and smaller than, let's say, Texas Cougars because of the habitat that they live in.
So again, this is a dumb question. Is it like breeding dogs, like a purebred panther or not, or?
So again, they're pumas, so it's the same species, and it's the same, I don't know if you call it the same breed, but basically it is. It's just some type of, some not genetic, some outward differences. So we just refer to it as a subspecies. I don't think you can compare it to dog breeds.
Okay. So, again, I'm full of these questions that if you're a biologist, you're like, Eric, enough with that. Why do they call them a cougar and a panther? They look different, but they have babies that look like
well, they don't really look different. If you look at a cougar and a Florida panther, they're very similar. Same color, same general characteristics, looks. The kittens are born with spots until they're about a year old. 6 months to a year, they lose their spots. The same, like I said, tawny color. It's just local, what they call them. So, yeah.
I get it.
So you got mountain lions, same species. Cougars, same species. Florida panthers, same species.
I did not know that. It's just the, got it. Lesson 101 and Basic Biology 101. Does intense heat, are you seeing a impact on climate change, on wildlife and habitat?
Well, I wouldn't call it intense heat. It's more a change in our rain cycle and just the fluctuation in temperatures in the spring and the fall. For instance, you know, our coldest month is generally January, February, but this year it started, we had a cold week in November, we had a couple in December, and then January was warm, I think, last year. Last year it might have been really warm. And then February was kind of fluctuating. We've had cold snaps all the way until like 2 weeks ago, which is not common. So it's fluctuation in rainfall and it's fluctuation in temperature more than just an increase in heat in the summer.
And how does that fluctuation in temperature impact things?
Well, with some vegetation, if it's leafing out, thinking, you know, it's spring and it's time to leaf out, you have a cold snap. If it gets cold enough, you'll end up, you know, killing or at least losing a lot of vegetation, stressing out the plants. It's not a common occurrence here like it is, let's say, in Texas, who has more temperate temperatures.
Yeah, I was just at Crystal River and the manatees, you know, had a struggle with the cold snap.
Yes. Back in 2010, we had that severe winter. We lost a lot of manatees. We lost snook. Lost a lot of, you know, marine species because of that cold weather.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point you made. Climate change, I always think gets hotter, but it means fluctuation. So colder too can be just as damaging in non-normal conditions.
And I think the biggest, like I said, changes in rain snowfall, the dryness, I think, is probably part of the reason that we're having so many wildfires out west. It's just, it's been dry for so long. They're not getting their normal snowfall or rainfalls, so they're just not getting that, you know, they're not able to quench the dry soils, the dry duff, which can start so easily a fire if it's ignited.
That's so scary.
That's why burning, prescribed burning in months where the conditions are good helps prevent wildfires in the future, because we reduce that vegetation and that duff layer so that if something were to spark, then we're able to manage it. It doesn't just run crazy, hot, fast. It runs slower, and we're able to actually get into where we can manage it.
Okay, this has been treated, and this is not. Wow, that's different, isn't it? It is so fast too, huh? That it grows back up.
Yes.
How often do you have to reburn an area? Like a second?
We try to do 3-year rotations.
Oh, look at this strand of pines.
So when you do when you plan, you can only purchase land if it's within your boundary. So the Florida Panther boundary is actually at our boundary line, so we can't technically, we couldn't purchase land adjacent to us if it came available because it's not within our boundary. If it was, then we could. So like Everglades Headwaters, did you visit Everglades Headwaters at all?
No, that's where I'm heading to next.
Okay. So Everglades Headwaters has a huge conservation area boundary, which only small portions of it are actually owned by the refuge system. Many pieces are under easement, still managed by the landowner, but they aren't eligible for development. So it's another way for us to keep land wild for use by wildlife. But because they're within that boundary, if land does come available, they can purchase it.
Okay, so what are we doing?
We are going to one of the holes that has water in it still. There's a gator there and there's several wading birds, so we'll see if we can sneak up on them.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny.